everyone, welcome to Informally Formal. It is a great pleasure and an honor when I'm able to bring you someone of the caliber and stature of the president of Dhaka Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the largest SME-driven trade organization in Bangladesh, Mr. Rizwan Rahman, a very smart and capable person that knows how to lead from the front. So, without further ado, a very warm welcome to you, Rizwan. Welcome to the show.
Absolute pleasure, and super glad to be back on your show, Akber.
The pleasure is all ours. I'll get started right away, Rizwan. The topic that we want to handle is about the LDC graduation. So now, my first question to you is what the business community ought to do to prepare for the challenges that lie ahead post-2026. Over to you, Rizwan.
First thing, let's identify the challenges. Of course, we have the preferential market access, the duty-free quota-free. Then we have the loss of TRIPS waivers, rules of origins, which are going to be very stringent. Local competition will be arising from lower tariff rates and import of certain countries. Foreign competition arising from lack of market access for the exporters. And then we also have the potential loss of cash incentives in the export-oriented sectors. And then ISMs, the international support measures, which will be lost, which may in turn affect low-cost access to credit. And of course, the lack of non-existence of cash incentives and tax holiday. So let me just start by just giving you a brief on something I would like to share in Bangla. People do see a lot of challenges, and wherever there are challenges, there are opportunities. So when you say challenges, it's আমি যদি বাংলায় বলি আমরা এখন জাকাত দেওয়ার প্রাপ্য এই ভয়ে কি আমরা বড়লোক হব না exactly what the LDC graduation is. So my point is that we are now a graduate, we need to act like one. Wherever there is a challenge, there is an opportunity on the other end of the tunnel. So how do we address this? To address the opportunities, I must appreciate the initiative of the Prime Minister's Office to have a implementation and monitoring committee of LDC under the Prime Minister's Office, which is headed by the Principal Secretary. And I'm also thankful to the government and the Prime Minister's Office for including Dhaka Chamber as an esteemed member of the panel, along with 3 other private sector members, which includes the DCCI and the BGMEA, and the Bangladesh Association of Pharmaceutical Industries. So we 4 represent the private sector as a whole in this committee, and we have already sat on multiple issues, several meetings held physically and virtually. In the meantime, I'm also proud to announce that Dhaka Chamber has been assigned to do the research work for the specific topics of export diversification as well as the local market development. So interestingly, I have done a lot of studies in these regards. First things first, to be more competitive in the exports, we are talking about export diversification. We have been asked to identify 6 emerging export sectors, which includes various, of course, pharmaceuticals. When I say 6 emerging exports, this is beyond RMG. Needless to mention, RMG, the term made in Bangladesh, has put Bangladesh in the global map as a brand image, which is actually a very positive sign for Bangladesh. But we need to look into other sectors. As you know, the 6.7% tariffs, which will the cost will go up, and then we will lose a few $1 billion in terms of revenue as soon as we graduate. And then there will be a grace period. Interestingly, the few graduates, the 5-6 new graduates of this batch, the batch of 2026, they are COVID graduates. Not only they are battling the post-graduation challenges, but they are also facing the challenges of economic recovery post-COVID regime. So we thought, how about we have a separate basket for these COVID graduates and give them a little bit of extension or some sort of a facility for them to facilitate both the challenges of the LDC graduation or the graduation of the economic recovery post-COVID-19. So to put the long story short, this committee has 6 subcommittees, various, or some on tariff, some on smooth transition, some on export diversification. I'm a part of many of them. If we work together, including all these trade bodies, there is a possibility that we can address these challenges and convert them into opportunities.
There is always silver lining, and we ought to look at the silver lining, the opportunities, rather than only harp on the challenges. I couldn't agree with you more. Spoken like a true leader, I must say. I might also mention very quickly, Rizwan, as you know, the CDP under UN DESA, when a country graduates, they then look at it And even beyond, let's say, even if it were not for COVID, in 2024, if we had graduated, CDP would look at it, and then country to country specific threats or challenges that they have, then they extend. They can extend 2 years, they can sometimes even extend up to 3 years. So you're right about that as well. Bangladesh faces certain challenges, for a lack of better word, in terms of, as you know, there are three main areas where they look at economic area. Of course, there is the income area, there is the HDI, which is the Human Development Index, and the environmental, the risk assessment factor of it. So Bangladesh, as you mentioned, has graduated with flying colors in both the triennial test. Let me just go into then, what opportunities then do you see, Rizwan, for businesses? And as you address those opportunities, I would also like your views on how should we prepare ourselves to avail of those opportunities. Over to you, Rizwan.
If you see the main opportunities that lie ahead, availability of credit at a lower interest rate in view of potentially improved credit rating. That's number one, which means access to low-cost financing. FDI inflow. We're now a graduate country, plain and simple. So, of course, once you strengthen the domestic market by looking at the health of the local investors, that's where automatically the foreign investors come in. So, of course, development of newer business sectors to tap different markets will actually help our global footprint. So creating domestic brands is very important. For example, we have McDonald's all over the world. We need to create our own brand, to serve the global footprint. Like we have done in RMG, Bangladesh is known for garments. Bangladesh is now almost known for footwear. It's fairly big, So various domestic brands, for example, we have footwear companies like Apex, or lifestyle companies like Sailor or Yellow, and various others. We need to set our foot in the global footprint market.
If I may just interrupt you 1 second here, as you were talking about export basket diversification, it goes without saying, it's critical for Bangladesh for us to achieve that, and achieve that in a rather hurry. So that's a vulnerability area. But wouldn't you say one of the key areas that Bangladesh ought to concentrate on is the trade agreements, facilitations with different countries and different regions, with the EU, with Britain, with America? As we lose our LDC status, many of these things have to be relooked at. I'm sure the government is looking at it, but don't you think that's a very important area?
As we lose our tariffs and privileges, it is very important. But as you know, that Bangladesh is already working for SEPA with India. Bhutan's FTA is done. Again, Nepal is en route. Sri Lanka is being talked about. Already negotiations are on. Post-Brexit FTAs are being proposed, but at the end of the day, we are asking for certain. In fact, I had an event with British investors along with the British High Commission in Bangladesh, and we talked about that until there is an FTA, there needs to be certain privileges and facilities from these individual governments to help Bangladesh face those challenges. Of course, free trade agreement, PTA, FTA, and then RTA, there is so many. These are very important, but sometimes these agreements, you have to also check the cost of these agreements. And sometimes the regional agreements, it's very difficult because you're not only agreeing to one country, you have to agree with all other countries, and all other countries have to be in agreement with you. So it's not that easy as 1, 2, 3.
Sure, absolutely.
The conversation with Sri Lanka has been happening for the last decade. So of course, we need to empower the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the commercial wings of the Ministry of Commerce in those diplomatic missions abroad. They need to be more effective, and they have to have communication with inclusion of the private sector. And as you said, the challenges, when I talked about EODB, we need to be able to draft new laws and regulations to address the specific needs of the LDC graduation, which will eventually create a better and improved legal as well as a regulatory environment, because you're asking about what are the main opportunities. And then at the same time, if that happens, there will be creation of newer business opportunities and also increased entrepreneurial activities. So eventually, if you want to bring in these FDIs or create the domestic market or enhance the domestic market, I think, again, tax incentives locally, rationalization, ease of doing business, company formation, land registry reforms, and then VAT automation, tax automation. These are very important.
We talked about FTA or preferential trade agreements. We talked about a whole bunch of stuff. Rizwan, I'll leave it up to you. Recap it in the next 2 minutes, and then we'll wrap it up.
Thank you. So, as you said, through the discussion, I'm sure you understood that the LDC graduation is more of an opportunity for us rather than a challenge. And both the challenge and opportunities, they need to identify properly to reap the benefits of the graduation. And an ecosystem of knowledge transfer activities must be developed in order to enhance the creativities. So now, tariff, income tax, VAT, and other tax-related issues must be rationalized in a manner so that maximum benefits can be taken. Later graduation, as tax holiday and fiscal incentives are all going to be gone. They will no longer sustain. And then we talked about the PTAs, FTAs, RTA, along with bilateral and multilateral agreements, which must be signed however way possible, make these departments accountable, make it happen, and then local backward industries of exporters, import substitute industries must be developed for export diversification, which I've already addressed. And then relationships between FDI and exports must be revisited, and actions have to come, they need to be taken accordingly to ensure that full potential of the graduation is utilized. And once again, I'm going to speak on behalf of the local industry, promote local market development, and that's exactly how. And of course, you must give the RMG success model to all the new upcoming sectors all across the world, so these individual sectors can take Bangladesh in the global footprint. Thank you.
Wonderful. Rizwan, I couldn't have summed it up any better. So I cannot thank you enough, Rizwan, for taking your precious time out. I'd like to thank our audience for joining us. We're still going through some tough times, so please stay careful. COVID is still there. Hopefully one day we'll overcome this challenge as well. I'll catch you in the next session. Have a good one. Bye-bye.